Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hiraeth and Other Words podcast. I am your host, Timothy Mangle, and this week we're doing a solo episode. And we're going to be talking about the field in which all things grow. And I am very excited about this. This specific topic I am just a huge fan of, and I can just go on and on and on about that. And I will in a couple of minutes, but before we do that, I just wanted to kind of do some housekeeping and just let you guys know about some stuff that's going on and some changes that are going to be coming to the podcast. So normally how we do the podcast is I will do a solo episode, and then the next week I'll have a friend come over and we'll have a conversation / interview and just kind of talk about something with them. And recently, if I'm just being really honest, a lot of trying to find guests and to make sure schedules are, work and, that my house will be clean and just all of this stuff. It's a lot to balance with a full-time job, and actually I'm in the process of starting a new job within the next couple weeks. So, and which I'm very excited about. I can talk about it some other time, but just with all this going on and all this stuff, my heart is always to give you, the listeners, the best out of everything that I can. And I feel like for me, what that looks like is maybe stepping back from having 2 interviews a month, just cutting it down to 1, focusing on that, and then focusing on these solo episodes and making them, I don't want to say better, because I feel like the ones before have been good. I just really want to be able to focus more on this and, kind of not have to worry about those other stuff behind the scenes and as semantics as much, at least in this season. There's a chance that, who knows what the future is going to look like. It could be more people coming on than normal. Just for now, for the next couple months, at least as I go through this job transition, and I am in the process of actually trying to find a new studio for this place and for the podcast. I'm still working all of those things out. So for the next couple months or so, at least the foreseeable future, it's just going to be 1 interview a month with somebody, and then the rest are going to be these solo episodes. And I really hope that that's okay with you, because this is for you, so I want you to be able to enjoy whatever it is that we're doing here. So that being said, I know that I get a lot more listens whenever I have somebody else on, because they do their part and they share, and I get an audience from those people who might not know about the podcast but are hearing about it through a guest that has come on or whatever. So all that to say is, because I'm not going to be doing that as much, the podcast isn't going to be getting spread as much, which it seems weird for me to be complaining about that or whatever. I don't really think I'm complaining, but all that to say is I really need your help. If you have found, this episode or any episode beneficial, I just ask that you would share that with a friend or two. Just to help get the word out. That would mean a lot to me. It's the simplest, easiest way to be able to help and support the podcast, is to just tell somebody about it or to just share it on your timeline. So just quick recap. Going forward, going to be doing a lot more solo episodes, but with that, hopefully I'm going to in May, next month, I'm going to be doing a 3-part series that'll be 3 solo episodes in a row, all on one topic, which I'm looking forward to that very much. So that'll kind of be like a test run to see, do people like this or not. But ultimately, I want to hear from you. What do you want? What makes you happy from this podcast? Okay, so I think I covered all that. But if you have any questions or anything, and just feel free to message me. If you want more content, sign up for our Patreon. It just starts at $1 a month. And then you get a bonus episode a month there, and plus we got a whole like 8 or 9 episodes in the back catalog there. So you got lots of stuff to check out. All right, now that that's all taken care of, let's talk about the field in which all things grow. Oh man. So, yeah, we're gonna be talking about God a lot this episode, and that's always been one of my favorite topics, or at least my whole life. But somehow along the way, I started to develop this picture in my head when someone would say God, or when I would think of God. And I feel like this probably is, it's more common than it's not, but the image that I get in my head is one of, a human man. Or the image that I used to get, let's say, is one of a human man, old gray hair and long beard. Yeah, and I'm not here to say that that's bad or wrong or anything like that. What's the most important thing is how you relate back to that image, right? So for me, I don't necessarily know if having that image of God in my head really is the most beneficial. And this is for me personally, because I know some people who do have a similar image or something like that, and it works for them. So, it's all about connecting back to spirit. It's all about connecting back to God. So however you interpret whatever that word means, as long as it is something that centers you and continues to move you forward in a light and loving way, then kind of how you define that word, it doesn't really matter, at least to me. You won't have me like kicking in your door with a referee whistle blowing it whenever you envision God a different way from me. That's fine. Yeah. So this idea of God as an old man with a beard sitting on a cloud, we're all very familiar with that archetypical image of God. And again, not that that's a wrong image, because God, he's ancient. He's personal, and so those two things alone kind of put it into it's easier for our brains to understand it when we make it an old person, because old, ancient, personal, person, right? So it's the words that we use easily define the things that we're describing. I mean, that's what words are for. So there's a reason that this image or archetype or whatever of God comes up, because there is some validity to it. For me personally, I found a deeper and more, again, personally fulfilling definition and understanding of that word and that reality. So when I was coming into my time of trying to, as I talked about in my episode, I believe it's called Missionary to Mystic, and I talk about my spiritual journey. I talk about this time of walking away from all sort of fundamental understandings of God and trying to redefine those things or re-understand those. And one of the biggest questions that I've ever asked in my life and spent a lot of time trying to figure out is this question of what is God? And that question arose in this time of trying to redefine all of these things and re-understand those. So, when I was going through that time, I remembered this Bible verse from the Bible, because that's where you keep Bible verses, is in the Bible. And it's from this book called Acts, which is Acts of the Apostles. So Jesus dies and is resurrected and then ascends to heaven. And after that time happens, the time before that is, which in Jesus' life is called the Gospels. And so you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the Gospels. That's Jesus' life. And then the next book in the Bible is called Acts of the Apostles. And so that would be the people who were the disciples of Jesus after Jesus went away, wherever he went. I hope he sends a postcard. Those people were left here, and it's important to know how they migrated through that first season of Christ being gone. And in that time, rose a man named Paul. And if you've listened to the podcast, I've mentioned Paul a lot. And Paul was the disciple that took Judas's place after Judas hung himself for betraying Christ. So Paul came in and kind of self-appointed himself as a disciple / apostle of Christ. And I'm saying a lot of big biblical words or whatever, but Paul was one of the first Christian missionaries to go outside of Jerusalem and Israel, that area really. And the reason that that's significant is because it's not necessarily clear whether or not the disciples understood that the message of Jesus was something for all people. In the book of Acts, you don't really see there any sort of urgency within the disciples themselves to take this message outside of Jerusalem. A lot of the heart behind Acts is actually seeing God work within these people to help them understand that their religion and their way of being wasn't just for them and their small circle, but actually it was a mode of being that was for all people. And I believe I've talked about this before. This is where we get the idea of Catholicism. So the word Catholic means universal. So when they say Catholic Church, that's actually supposed to mean the universal church. Because the people who founded the Catholic Church understood that the Christian message wasn't just for one people, it was for all people. And I don't say that in meaning that all people should, go and convert to Christianity, but the core tenets and the core mode of being presented in Christianity could be found throughout all of these different cultures and religions and all of those things. And what was important to these early disciples and apostles and missionaries were that they were able to point that out and have the people celebrate it within their own culture, within their own heritage, and to really use their own words to connect back to God. Now, Paul was in Athens, which was, as we all know, it was somewhere in the world. Greece, right? Yeah, sure. There we go. So Paul's walking around Athens, and he sees a bunch of statues devoted to what is marked as the unknown God. So there's these people in this town who have shrines dedicated to a quote-unquote unknown God. So Paul comes along, and he sees this unknown God, and there's something that wells up within him as he begins to talk to the people around this shrine, this altar, whatever you want to call it. And he sees that it's like, no, it's not that it's not nameable. We all know what it is, but we don't know how to connect back to it. So I'm just going to read this Bible verse. Because for me, I'm pretty sure I started saying this earlier. When I was in this phase of trying to figure things out, I remembered this verse and wanted to go back to it and read it with kind of fresh eyes and just read the text plain without kind of putting any of my baggage on it. And see, because for me, this was the simplest definition of what God is. And so that was the answer that I was trying to get, through various different means and all across the spectrum. But so the verse that I'm going to be reading is in Acts 17, and let's start at verse 24 and go down to 28. So I'm going to be reading for a little bit. Hope you don't mind. I hope I do well. Here we go. Acts 17, 24 through 28. And now this is Paul speaking to people who are worshipers of the quote-unquote unknown God, or people who would be surrounding that shrine. Paul says, The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God in the hope that they might feel their way towards him and find him. Now, this is where it gets good. Yet, he is actually not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, that is the such a beautiful statement. Think about this with me, okay? So we're going to be talking about this for some time. Paul is talking about God, and he's trying to say to them that, he says it. He's like, this isn't something that's far off and like a man on a cloud who's looking down and whatever, because he kind of paints that image a little bit earlier, right? So he's talking about, God, he doesn't need human hands to serve him. He gives to all humans, all everything, the life, breath, and everything. So again, it's easy in that kind of language to see God as this thing that gives or takes or has opinions on things or whatever. But then Paul goes on to kind of really summate what God is and our relationship back to that. And that is, he says, in God we move and live and have our being. Now, the question then becomes, if God is simply something standing outside and detached from time and space that we're contained within, then how the heck do we live and move and have our being in God? And, for me, I just love that imagery. And I kind of think about it a little bit like a fish tank. that God is this big fish tank, and that everything that's happening inside of it is part of what we're up to, part of this grand tapestry of everything being connected and everything existing within this one larger thing. So this belief is actually called panentheism. So what that would translate to in Greek is the idea of all in God. That's what the word panentheism means. And I would be a panentheist, which means that I believe that everything that exists within God. And the reason I believe that is because of this Bible verse. Oh, man. And there's so much to be said about why I really love and appreciate this worldview. And one of the reasons is because it's, like it says here, it's this reaffirming hope that God, the source of all, the source of everything, the source of all life, of all goodness, all badness, all everythingness, he's not separate from us. He's not far off doing, God stuff. He's here. It's not even a he, it's just this, it just isness. And, going off of that and kind of coming, talking about this verse, there's this famous Christian theologian, thinker, philosopher, whatever you want to call him. His name is Paul Tillich. He has a couple books that I've read, Courage to Be. I'm forgetting some other ones now. Courage to Be is his big one, and it might even be in that book. But Paul Tillich has this famous quote that is that God is the ground of all being. that anything that has being, anything that is or is not, if anything that could potentially exist has to exist within or on something. It has to have, if you can't put a glass in the air, right? You need a table to put it on, right? So you need something to support the whole thing that goes up. And this is what Paul Tillich is trying to say by saying that God is the ground of all being. So again, God is this thing that exists, and all things that are found within that thing. And that again, there's by definition, God doesn't nothing transcends that. Nothing is bigger than that. So of course, God, whatever that is the thing that it's the thing that allows all the other things to happen. That's of course, and again, it's the beautiful thing about God is that, it's both this thing that allows everything to happen, and I forgot where I was going to go with the other side of that, but it's because I'm getting so excited about this idea of, again, so what is the title of this? It's the field in which all things grow. And so that's really how this vision of God really came to me. I was struggling with these questions of what is God, and going through these verses. And I remember I was working at a place near a field, and I just I could see the field and all this just variety of things that were growing up within it. And I had this understanding of, well, that field is the ground of all being for everything else in that field, that field wouldn't be able to have whatever it is in that field without the field itself, right? So God is the field. Everything else is the thing that grows up out of this. Last week when I was having my conversation with Matt, we talked about this Jewish mystic belief of God emptying himself, and that being the thing that forms creation. That there's this process that God went through 13.6 billion years ago, where it began to empty itself, and that emptying became creation. It became reality. It became the universe. So what does the word universe mean? It's one verse. It's one song. And again, this goes back to the image painted in Genesis chapter 1. When God created the world, he spoke it out. So again, one thing being brought out back from the source. And again, like I said last week with Matt, is, if as a singer, when I'm singing a song, and that's allowed to be out there, but it's a part of me. It's connected to me. I'm giving it to the world, and whoever would participate with that, they can do that. But ultimately, it's connected back to me, the source of the song. And God is the same way with all things. So you have God, our creators, singing out this song. And again, it's brilliant that these old mystics and philosophers, that they understood that the universe was made in some sort of vibration way, right? So everything's made from vibration. And again, what is singing, and what is, your vocal cords, they vibrate. Man, I just can't get over how beautiful and how well that all kind of, works together. So then I guess you kind of ask yourself, well, then what is, if it's all one, if it's a part of this bigger thing, then, why have creation, or why have, why have this experience? And those are very good questions that I knew you would ask, and that I was kind of prepared for with a Bible verse. I bring up this Bible verse all the time, so I just wanted to read it actually verbatim on the podcast. Let's see if we can find it, because I didn't set it aside, and oh no. Yeah, I'm having a hard time finding it at the moment. Well, okay, so I'm going to stop doing that. But so the Bible verse that I was looking up was the one that I talk about all the time, where any characteristic that is to be known about God can be known about God through nature. So God decided to manifest himself in this crazy, far out, interstellar, beautiful, complex, infinite universe. That when God wanted to show itself, it did this crazy thing, right? I'm slowly looking up this Bible verse while also doing this at the same time, so please do forgive me. But yeah, so you look out at creation, and it's this. What I really love about creation is that it doesn't. I found the verse. And maybe I should just read the verse. Here we go. I'm just going to read this because I feel like I'm all over the place, but here we go. Romans 1:20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature has been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. So yeah, so I'm going to read that one more time. Sorry about all the hustle bustle to get to this point, but Romans 1:20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. I love this, okay? Because think about it this way, right? So there's a level at which we can understand God through at the level that we're at. God is infinitely knowable by definition. God is infinite. The Jewish mystic word for God is simply infinity. It's Ein Sof. It means infinity. It transcends bigger than anything that you can possibly put into any category, again, by definition. So if you look at all creation or the universe, you see, from our perspective, you have the earth and you have nature, and it's coherent and it's understandable. And as you go out farther and farther into the cosmos, it gets bigger and crazier and more complex and harder to understand. And that's the same thing with God. You know, it's easy to as Paul says here, you can look out into nature and you can, I would encourage everyone to do this. Go out and just stare into nature. Go and look at what has been made naturally by the outflowing of creation. Just go stare at that, and it won't be long before you understand the nature and the divine power and the infiniteness of God. And the reason that I can say that is because there's something that is spoken by nature that can't be articulated with words, but it can only be experienced and felt and understood on a level that is deeper than intellectual understanding. It's a feeling thing. It's a connection thing. And again, you look out at nature, and by God, it's hard to not see nature as fundamentally beautiful. And again, creation exists so that the attributes and the nature of God, of the source of all things, can be manifest. And what we see in that is beautiful sunrises. We see beautiful sunsets. We see trees bearing fruit. We see death and decay, but that death and decay is ultimately wrapped back up into new life. And you see all these things, and it's gospel. It's a sermon being preached, and all it is just a bird flying by a waterfall. And you gaze upon that, and you let your intellectual mind step aside, and you just learn to connect with that on a feeling or a gut or a spiritual level. And the worries about, being able to articulate or to understand in a Western, very logical and scientific way, that doesn't matter, because there's a satisfaction within the individual. And again, so going off of this why, why did God choose to do this? And man, I can't say why, because obviously a lot of that is above my pay grade, but my opinion is because God wants to be known. And I know I've said this Jewish proverb on this podcast before, I think, but if not, here you go. It is, what does a being that is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all places are omnipresent lack? Limitation. And that's where we come along. We come along as these limited, partial beings that are helping God to understand and to discover itself. And it's above my pay grade to say whether or not God already knows those things, or just loves the experience of self-discovery, or if he's learning something completely new. It's beyond my pay grade. But I say that to say that we have this beautiful opportunity to be the knowers and the seekers and the ones who can see the divine everywhere. When you learn how to look for the divine, when you understand that it's not this thing that is just this far off being, sending blessings or curses, or, taking your grandma or giving you a nice parking spot. It's so much bigger than that. It's the thing that we move in, we have our being in, and that gives us life. That thing, whatever that is. Again, if you want just the image of a man, whatever, but understand that it's so much bigger than that, and that it's all consuming, and that it's our gift, and it's our duty to be here and to seek and to discover. And again, God is this huge word for this deep, 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 infinite and personal aspect and of reality. It's the fish tank that we're swimming in. It's the field in which all things grow. So again, what is the encouragement for us, and what do I kind of hope that you walk away from this with? I'm going to read one more Bible verse for you. This one I actually have marked, so hopefully will be a little bit easier to find. I won't have to do Googling on my phone mid-podcast. But this is from Psalms 139, starting at verse 7. This is good stuff. This is the hope that I'm trying to present through this belief and through this understanding of God. But it says, "Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in death, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as day, for darkness is as light with you. My friends, we are connected and a part of and swimming in and immersed in and growing out of this beautiful thing called God. Now, if you question, is that thing beautiful? Is it benevolent? Is it on our side? Again, all of its divine nature can be known by sitting by a waterfall, by sitting by a stream. If you have any flowers nearby, if you have any grass nearby, all of those things radiate the glory and the goodness of God. That's another verse from the Bible. It says, the heavens declare the glory of God. And it doesn't just mean this heaven, this utopian place that we think of or whatever, but it means the skies. It means when we look up and we see clouds rolling across the sky and we see beautiful sunsets and we have this adoration swell up within it. It's because we're supposed to enjoy that. It's because we're supposed to give into the adoration, to give into these desires for beauty and for benevolence and goodness. So my friends, I hope that you are encouraged that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter what you believe, no matter your skin color, your political party, your religion, your whatever, that you are connected back to the loving source of which you move and have your being and you live. And I want you to be encouraged by that. I want you to understand that your life isn't this meaningless thing that's kind of happening arbitrarily out here in the middle of nowhere. But at the heart of you, at the heart of everything around us, is this deep connection back to life and back to our being and back to just everything. And I hope that encourages you. I hope that gives your suffering an excuse of why it's here. Because again, it's not just here to be this one thing that's just suffering, but it's here to be a part of everything. And the real, I love this belief because it answers the question of, well, where is God? He's right here. We're connected to him. We have our being in him. We're intertwined with that. There is, the distinction between me and you is, or me and God is really just this arbitrary thing that I make up in my head. But at any time that I want, the presence, the spirit, the source of all life, it's here. It's just learning how to find it and to being aware of it. And okay, one more Bible verse, but Jesus says that, he says, I am the vine and you should abide in me. So think about that, is that your grapes growing on a vine, right? So Jesus is the God avatar of the Bible. So he's the representative figure of God. So he says, I am the vine. So that's God saying, I am a vine and you are my fruit. And again, think about that. Think how beautiful of a compliment that is to you as an individual. That, when you look at a grapevine, you're not looking at the vine. You're looking at the grapes. So even there you see this great, beautiful humility in God, that he's not saying, I am the grapes. I am the whole thing that's, it's about me. But God is saying, no, I am the vine, and you will be the grapes that grow up out of it and can be juicy and be salt and be light and all of these things, man. Man, that's so good. And again, it goes back to this mode of being, that as we, if Jesus says, if you want to abide in me, abide in my teachings. And what are his teachings? He says, the whole law can be summed up in these two things. Love the Lord your God with all of your being, and to love your neighbor as yourself. If you can do those two great difficult tasks, and not even just do them, but to aim yourself and to set yourself as this is how I want to conduct myself, the ground of being will be on your side. The ground of being will match up because again, it's natural within you to want to be connected back to the vine, to be connected back to the source, because we are all connected to it. So my friends, I love this. If you have any questions, if you want to know more about this, if you feel like I wasn't clear, understand that it's all just the field in which all things grow. That's what God is. God is this infinite field. Everything is growing out of it. And that can seem impersonal, but again, he's just as close to us as the vine is to the grape. Probably even closer. My friends, I hope you've been encouraged. I hope you know that you are not alone. I hope you know that you have great purpose in being here. So yeah, I hope you come back. I just ask that you would share this. You would let just tell somebody this week that they matter. How about you just do that for me and share this about? But make sure you tell somebody this week that they matter and that, yeah, they're a part of something so much bigger than themselves. All right, friends. I think that's all from me. I hope you're well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're surrounded by people who love you, and people that you get to love. And yeah. So friends, I just ask that you would love the Lord your God with all of your strength and all your might and all of your being, and that you would love your neighbor as yourself, and that you would love yourself because you are loved. Goodbye.